Welcome back. You are watching India Tonight with me, Sumit Chaturvedi. Well, let's start with some news from political circles. The Cabinet Committee on Political Affairs has approved inclusion of a caste enumeration in upcoming national census. Well, this marks a significant shift in policy, reigniting debates across the nation. Well, let's dive into details first. And the decision announced by Union Minister Ashwini Vaishnav, it comes after years of demands from political parties and social groups. The caste census was delayed since 2020 due to COVID-19 pandemic, and it will be part of next national census. The government emphasizes that exercise will be conducted transparently to empower marginalized communities economically and socially. The move has sparked varied reactions. So while some hail it as a step towards social justice, others warn it could deepen caste divisions. Opposition parties, particularly Congress, it claimed credit, pointing to their long-standing demand for caste census. Well, they argue it's essential to address inequalities, especially in reservation for education and jobs. We explore and address all the sides of this topic with our guest tonight. But first, let's listen into what IT Minister and LOP Rahul Gandhi have to say on this.
Enumeration should be transparently included. I'm emphasizing the word transparently included in the census instead of surveys. This will strengthen the social and economic structure of our society while the nation continues to progress. Under the leadership of our Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, the Cabinet Committee of Political Affairs has decided today, that is 30th April 2025, that caste enumeration should be included in the forthcoming census. This demonstrates that our government is committed to the values and interests of our society and country. Like in the past, when our government had introduced 10% reservation for the economically weaker sections of the society, without causing any stress in any section of the society. Thank you.
And it's been a very detailed, very granular exercise. We would like the national census to follow some of the ideas of the Telangana census, and we are more than happy to help the government develop the national census on similar lines. We've had two other issues that we have discussed which are also central, which is the 50% cap on reservations. Now this is becoming an impediment. This is becoming an impediment to development, to progress of our country, and to the progress of backward castes, Dalits and Adivasis. And we want this 50% barrier to be eliminated and broken. We have stated that.
And we will not leave it here. We will discuss all that with our esteemed panelist this evening, Kailash Adhikari, MD Governance Now, and Sanjay Jha, author and former Congress spokesperson. First, beginning with you, Mr. Adhikari, why is there a step taken now? What is there's something which we can read about this time?
I don't see that reading with time is anything necessary, Sumit, because it's the job of the government and the government is doing its job. And any such kind of announcement or any major policy decisions, it is in the dual course of governance, I would call it. And here the government is taking a step forward by saying that the caste enumeration should be transparently included in the census. And even according to the Article 246 of the Constitution of India, the census is a union subject. Rather than politically motivated states targeting to do a survey in a non-transparent manner for political gains, it is much better that the caste enumeration is done in the forthcoming census. And that will definitely help the government. Such figures will definitely help the entire nation and the government while they are making policy decisions. So I don't see it as a timing issue. It is in the due course of governance that any government does.
And I'll come to you, Mr. Jha, now, and I would like to ask you, why now? Is it a political compulsion more than a decision which is being taken and announced now?
Sumit, good evening to you and to Kailash. This has been pretty much in the public platform for a while. The issue is, of course, decades old, but it has gathered a lot of currency and momentum, as you saw before the Lok Sabha elections. And what are the reasons behind that? And let's go beyond the rhetoric and political hyperbole here. You got to look at hard data. What is the data pointing? The data is pointing towards a couple of very, very disconcerting realities. One is that India is economically polarized as well as socially, shall we say, kind of seeing a lot of extremism. The economic empowerment is, in fact, an imperative. If you look at the fact that 1% of Indians have over 40% of India's wealth, that one data point is enough to manifest the kind of crisis we have. Secondly, you are part of a business channel, and therefore, you will understand that, of course, we need the stock market and the corporates and so on. Nobody's against corporate growth or private capital, but you're living in a country where you still have around 250, 300 million people who are just about surviving on $1 or $2 a day. Mr. Modi's government is giving 60% of Indians free food grains. Isn't that symptomatic of the kind of economic inequality that actually prevails in our society? So I think the fight for the caste census is really about trying to see how you can make the bottom of the pyramid become part of this India growth story that is talked about in New York, London, and in these sexy hotels in India, in Mumbai, Delhi, Kolkata, and Hyderabad. I think if we do not create a society where people feel they have equal opportunities, and these are not just going to be driven by public sector jobs. How much can the government create? You look at the data on unemployment in this country. The PhDs and engineers don't have jobs. What do they do? And then you have 85% of India. I mean, I belong to the forward caste, Sumit, but I will tell you, 85% of India is OBCs, is Dalits and Adivasis and the EBCs of our country. Do they get an equal opportunity in education? Can they compete for jobs and really get them? Forget the private sector. They don't even have an equal chance in getting openings in the government and the public sector. So I think the call for the caste census is a progressive cause. I don't think anybody should have any issues with this. The BJP has been critical about it for very long, but I'm glad they have belatedly woken up. The credit should go to everyone who's fought for it, whether it's Rahul Gandhi, the Congress, or the India Alliance. But I would say the BJP has at least woken up to the reality that you can't have a plutocracy or a kleptocracy being the only beneficiaries of India's growth. That's a simple point.
Right. Right. Mr. Adhikari, you have heard Mr. Jha saying all this now, and how do you respond to it? Do you still think that this is just a matter of time, anytime it had to happen? Because we are looking at another crisis which is brewing over, or maybe the problems. A week ago, Pahalgam massacre we have seen, and suddenly the whole focus shift towards having this caste inclusion in the census.
But I think there is no correlation between that. I mean, if media is trying to draw a correlation between that, then there's no endless there's no point to it. We can have endless discussion over it, and it makes no sense. I mean, what happened in Pahalgam, naturally, it was a very barbaric act of terrorism, and I'm sure that the government will take all its due action in due course, whatever they deem fit. But this is a completely different issue. Let's not mix two issues, or let's not try to politicize everything. Like Mr. Jha said, that this was in talks for decades. In 2010, the then Prime Minister had talked about it in the Lok Sabha also. Also, a group of ministers were formed for it, but nothing was done post that. Only the surveys were done, which were not in a transparent manner. And as I said in the beginning, that they are not a union subject. Here, what the government is trying to do, that if it is trying to address a particular issue which has been in the offing for so long, then it has come out in the forward and said that yes, transparently, the caste enumeration will be a part of the census, because then it will be official data, and that data will definitely be used by the government for the betterment of the economic and the social fabric of our nation. When any policy is framed, when any employment opportunities or any kind of reservations is talked about, then naturally this authentic data, which is done as a part of the census, will be much helpful.
Well, Mr. Jha, former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh said, "Jitni abadi utna haq." So you think that now, when abadi, the whole figures come out, the caste census also is there clearly what caste, where, what, how many numbers. You think then once again there'll be a debate of जितनी आबादी उतना हक.
Sumit, I think your question is very, very, relevant for the simple reason, right? We hear annually budgets are announced. There is fiscal policy, there is monetary policy. Everything needs to finally create a GDP growth. Nobody is going to say that India shouldn't be focused on its national income. At the same time, this whole discussion on making India equal means you will have to look at ensuring that those who have not been part of this entire India success story that we tom in Davos, then we are effectively only aggravating or accentuating an economic crisis that will tomorrow explode into a social problem. I mean, this is how societies struggle. And I believe that if you look at the Bihar survey, which I think the BJP should have woken up to a long time ago because they are partners with Nitish Kumar. Nitish Kumar did a caste survey that showed to you that 85% of the people belong to the backward communities of India. And this is the worrying data that even Kailash should know about it. There are roughly only 3% of people in Bihar could have a passenger car or two-wheelers. And around 2% of the people were postgraduates. And while some parameters may have gone up, the truth remains that we are not really seeing the change that we should have seen after so many years of independence. And I feel that today, all of us, you, Sumit, me, Kailash, speaking English, sitting on a very popular channel, we guys are actually very privileged. We are the elite. And we cannot be living in a bubble. Our lives cannot be driven by a Swiggy or a Zomato delivery at home. We got to look at, can people afford basic amenities at home? I mean, when India today still needs free food grains, I feel we cannot be very happy by saying we are going to become a 5 trillion economy in 3 years. It doesn't make any rational sense to have that conversation. I mean, just to give you one point, Mr. Modi and the BJP keep talking about a 5 trillion economy in whenever it happens, but we are the lowest in per capita income amongst all G20 countries. Per capita income is also not the only indicator, but it tells you that we got a massive uphill task ahead of us.
Right. Mr. Adhikari, do you think it's going to start or give a new lease of life to political parties who have always done politics based on caste? We have seen Mandal Commission. After that, the whole politics changed forever. So do you think it can give a new lease of life to the political parties who have always done politics based on caste? Because numbers will be out and open.
But for political parties who have always been, their politics has always been based on caste, I think they didn't, at one point of time, they didn't even need numbers to go ahead with their own political agenda. I mean, here the government is very clear that the caste enumeration to be done in the census is basically for the fact that when government decides for a particular policy, or it decides on reservation, or it decides on other economic and social parameters while deciding a particular policy, the data will help. Now, it's two sides of a particular coin. How you look at it, how someone looks at it. If certain political parties, for their own political benefit, want to use the data for certain means of exploitation, I mean, there's no stopping to them. Only the voter, when he votes in the ballot box, he can give an answer. And I believe in the last 10 years, a lot of such political parties who thrive on such kind of caste-based politics, they have got their answers from the public. So, I mean, we did not discuss that. Secondly, what Mr. Jha said regarding the fact that various parameters, I mean, since independence, there are a lot of things which at that time the government must have envisioned, but they could not do so. See, I mean, governance is not a very easy subject, which I'm sure, I mean, Mr. Jha is very senior to me and he understands that. While the current government is aiming for a certain, we are already the fifth largest economy, and it is very good that we are aiming for to be the third largest economy, because at the end of the day, economic development and development of all the sectors of the economy, all the pillars of the economy will actually lead to helping people come out of the poverty line or people being employed. Because if you do not think of economic progress, how will you help the common man of this country get jobs? How will you help the common man of the country being a part of the economy? So all these factors, while we are definitely facing the reality that a certain number of our population gets food grains, and that is basically after COVID that this government did that. Certain number of households should get certain free food grains because it is a matter of survival. And even after COVID, that was continued because India is also a socially welfare state. But at the same time, if you don't think of economic progress, how will the country prosper?
Yeah, Mr. Jha, so when your party was proposing this or was in favor of this, what about the economic prosperity? Won't it divide the pie instead of increasing the pie?
Sumit, let me tell you that actually, how does a pie grow bigger, right? It can only grow bigger when there are more participants in making that pie bigger. If you leave it in the hands of a few, you will create monopolies. You will create the oligarchies that Russia has. And you will create the kind of problem that America has today, where a couple of tech billionaires and an Elon Musk are running havoc with the country's even political system. So when you are going to concentrate economic power in the hands of a few, you will actually eventually even result in a democratic recession or a democratic deconsolidation. Here is the truth that we need to focus on. My friend Kailash mentioned about the COVID. Sumit, you must be aware that after COVID, India's recovery has been more K-shaped. Some people have become much better off, while the others have barely struggled to make two ends meet. The middle class, frankly speaking, has been devastated, forcing the finance minister to make the tax concessions that she did in the budget. Now, here is the problem. The problem is that at the end of the day, if you have certain people who don't have even the opportunity to compete in a level playing field, those who are more privileged will only become more and more powerful. So I think that is the crisis that needs to be addressed. I feel that every economic decision will have a political repercussion. Of course it will. I mean, please do not blame an RGD or Congress or Rahul Gandhi or Samajwadi Party for taking credit, because they have been at it for a long time. And I think Mr. Modi's government for tried to stonewall it. I don't know for what rational reason, because the data was very clear that India was not creating a very distributed, fairly distributed platform. If you remember, Sumit, during the time of the elections, when somebody used the word redistribution, people said, oh my God, we are going to become like a communist or a socialist country. That's such an absurd argument. India is not an either or country. You need private capital, you need liberalization, you need privatization, you need greater transparency, you need the big industrialists and the MSMEs and the medium sized companies. But you also need to lower poverty. You need to improve those who are at the bottom of the pyramid. You need to make Dalits and the OBCs and the Adivasis feel safer. You need to protect
Right,
your environment. You need to make sure that young children are not
right.
stunted.
But
Yeah,
Mr.
go ahead.
Jha, but breaching 50% reservation limit, which Supreme Court had put, doesn't it, in a way, impinge on the rights of others also? Because when the numbers are out in the open, 50% reservation limit being set, and what about the rights of others? What about the meritocracy which India really needs because it wants to have a Viksit Bharat by 2047?
No, absolutely. I agree that there has to be a fine balance. I will also tell you this, that this will probably apply more to the public sector and the government. But, eventually, as you know, Sumit, probably better than all of us, that India, to create jobs, to create prosperity, has to have its private sector booming, which hasn't happened over the last 10 years. Manufacturing as a share of GDP has gone down. Private capital investment hasn't happened despite those massive tax concessions that were announced in 2019. And the government expenditure can create what? A few projects, but even the projects are becoming capital intensive and don't create jobs. So you have a serious problem. I don't think even the caste census is about creating jobs alone. It's about making sure that your policies are also fair in focusing on those sections of the population that need your attention. You can't make policies only based on just a few sectors or a couple of big national champions who are going to drive this country
Right.
forward. That South Korean model is not going to work in our country.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Jha. Well, thank you, Mr. Adhikari, for joining me this evening and, well, talking on this important development which has happened today. Thank you for bringing forward the views. And that's all today we have in this edition and this news hour. For more news and updates, keep watching ET Now. Don't go anywhere.